When I came back, he was still standing in the exact same spot, looking utterly lost in my quiet, orderly kitchen. I handed him the towel. "Here you go." Our fingers brushed as he took it. His were cold. Thank you," he said, his voice low. "Well, you're a lifesaver, Mrs. Gable." Call me Carol, please," I said, turning to grab a dish rag from the sink to wipe up the puddle on the floor. "And it's no trouble at all. Would you like a glass of iced tea while you wait? It might be a while before your parents get back." He looked from the towel to my face, and I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Relief, maybe. I thought that very much. Thank you, Carol." He started to dry his hair, and as he did, he wrapped the big towel around his shoulders. And just like that, the sterile quiet of my afternoon was broken, and there was a stranger in my kitchen, wrapped in my husband's favorite towel, and for the life of me, I didn't feel an ounce of fear. I just felt curious. He sat at my kitchen table, the one where I did my crossword puzzles, while I poured him a glass of iced tea. The towel was still draped around his shoulders like a cape. It made him seem both smaller and more present at the same time. The initial awkwardness had melted away, replaced by a comfortable silence as I dropped a few ice cubes into his glass and added a slice of lemon, just how I like it. "Oh, thank you again," he said, taking the glass. "This is really kind of you. But it's the least I could do." "Sprinkler accidents are serious business," I said with a little smile, and he chuckled. It was a nice sound, a warm, genuine laugh that seemed to fill a space in the room I hadn't even noticed was empty. I sat down opposite him with my own half-finished crossword. So I started just making conversation. "Is it good to be home for a bit?" He took a slow sip of his tea, his eyes looking up the window at my hydrangeas. He was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I wondered if I'd overstepped. But then he sighed, a heavy sound for a man his age. "Honestly," he said, turning his gaze back to me, "it's complicated. That was the door, the one that separates small talk from real talk. From real talk, I could have let it close. I could have said something breezy like, 'Well, family always is,' and turned back to my puzzle. But something in his voice, a weariness that didn't match his years, helped me there. "Complicated how?" I asked gently. He looked down at the condensation on his glass, tracing a line with his finger. Said quietly, I do. But coming back here, it's like stepping into a life that isn't mine anymore. But they still see me as the 16-year-old who knew exactly what he wanted to do. I was going to be a lawyer, just like my grandfather." "You're not a lawyer?" I asked. He shook his head, a wry smile touching his lips. "I'm a graphic designer. I work for a company that designs logos for other companies. It's fine. It pays the bills, but it's not what I thought I'd be doing. And I can't quite bring myself to tell them how unfulfilled I feel. They're so proud of me, you know? I feel like I'd be letting them down." He said it all in a quiet rush, as if the words had been waiting right behind his teeth for someone, anyone, to ask the right question. And as I listened, I felt a strange sense of recognition. It wasn't his story, but the feeling behind it, that sense of being on a path you didn't consciously choose, of wearing a smile for the sake of others. Without thinking, I found myself saying, "I wanted to teach art." He looked up, surprised. "You did?" "Oh, yes," I said, a little laugh escaping me. "I was good at it, too. I had a scholarship to a wonderful arts college in Chicago. But I met Robert my senior year of high school. He was steady and he was kind, and he had a plan. And my father," I said with a sigh, thought an art degree was frivolous, a teaching degree in history. Now that was practical, so that's what I did. I taught history for 35 years. "Did you like it?" he asked, his attention fully on me now. I learned too. I found ways to love it. But every now and then I'd be in the classroom talking about the Renaissance, and I'd feel this ache, a little ghost of the life I might have had. It's not a regret. "Not really. I had a good life with Robert. I have wonderful children. It's just a different version of me that I never got to meet." The confession hung in the air between us. I hadn't said that out loud to anyone ever. Not to Robert, not to my children, not even to myself in such plain terms. Saying it to this young man, this near stranger wrapped in a towel in my kitchen, felt surprisingly freeing. He stared at me, his eyes full of a deep, quiet understanding. It wasn't pity. It was empathy. It was empathy. "A ghost of a different version of you," he repeated softly. That's exactly what it feels like. We sat there for a while longer, the iced tea forgotten, the crossword puzzle ignored. The kitchen, my quiet, orderly kitchen, had transformed into something else. It was a confessional, a haven. The towel he wore was no longer a symbol of his mishap, but of a strange, unforeseen intimacy. It was the simple object that had brought a moment of raw human honesty into the predictable rhythm of my life, and I found myself feeling profoundly grateful for it. The sun had started its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink that filtered through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the floor. Our conversation flowed on, easy and unburdened. We talked about his life in the city, the pressures of trying to build something meaningful for himself. He spoke of a recent heartbreak, not with drama, but with a quiet sadness that I understood all too well. It was the sadness of a future you had pictured so clearly, suddenly dissolving into smoke. In turn, I found myself sharing things I hadn't revisited in years. I told him about the first year after Robert died, how the silence in the house was a physical weight, how I'd wake up and make 2 cups of coffee out of habit, only to stand at the counter and cry over the second untouched mug. I told him about the fear I had deep down that the most vibrant parts of my life were already in the rearview mirror, that all that was left was this quiet, tidy epilogue. He didn't offer platitudes or easy reassurances, he just listened. He watched my face as I spoke, his gaze steady and respectful, and in his eyes I didn't see a pitying look for an old woman. I saw a fellow soul who understood the landscape of loss. He saw me, Carol, not just Mrs. Gable, the quiet widow next door. And in that moment, I felt a part of myself, the part I thought had been packed away with Robert's old sweaters, stir and wake up. "It sounds like you were a good team, you and your husband," he said softly when I finished. "We were," I nodded, a genuine smile finding my lips. "We weren't perfect, but we were a good team." Just then, we heard the sound of a car door slamming next door, followed by the familiar, cheerful voice of his mother, Eleanor. "Eric, are you out here?" He looked toward the window and then back at me. A look of profound gratitude washed over his face that, I should go. They're back." He stood up and the towel, now mostly dry, fell from one of his shoulders. "Carol," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you, and not just for the towel." "There's nothing to thank me for, Eric," I said, standing as well. "It was just a conversation." "I know," he insisted, shaking his head. "It was more than that. You have no idea. Thank you for seeing me." He folded the towel neatly and placed it on the back of the chair. It looked just like an ordinary towel again. He walked to the back door and swung it open. He paused on the threshold and looked back at me, a real warm smile lighting up his entire face. "Take care of those hydrangeas, Carol." "I will," I said. "And Eric, don't be afraid of the ghosts. Sometimes they're just reminding you of all the different people you're capable of being." He held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded and was gone. I stood there in the doorway, watching him cross the lawn to his parents' house, the evening air cool on my skin. The house was quiet again. The hum of the refrigerator seemed a little louder now, the silence more pronounced, but it wasn't the heavy, empty silence from before. It was a peaceful quiet, a reflective quiet. I walked over to the table and picked up the folded towel. It still felt a little damp. In the days and weeks that followed, life returned to its predictable rhythm. I waved to the Hendersons. Eric left a few days later, giving me a special wave and a smile from the passenger seat as they drove off. I went back to my crosswords, my gardening, my tidy, orderly life. But something inside me had shifted. That conversation, born from a comical mishap and a borrowed towel, had unlocked a room in my own heart I had kept shut for years. It reminded me that wisdom isn't something you just accumulate. It's something to be shared. It reminded me that vulnerability isn't a weakness, but a bridge. That unexpected afternoon didn't lead to some dramatic new chapter in my life. I didn't suddenly sell the house and join the Peace Corps, but the change was just as profound. I started calling my children more, not just to check in, but to truly talk. I asked them about their fears and their dreams, the parts of their lives they might have thought I was too old to understand. I signed up for a pottery class at the local community center, my hands finally finding the clay I'd longed for all those years ago. The memory of that day still stays with me, clear as a bell. It wasn't an earth-shattering event. It was a quiet, unexpected connection with a young man who needed someone to listen. And in doing so, he gave me a gift I never knew I needed. He reminded me that a tidy heart is all well and good, but a heart that is open, a heart that is willing to be a safe harbor for a little while, is a heart that is truly deeply alive. And every time I look out my kitchen window at those big, billowy hydrangeas, I smile because they remind me that even in the most quiet, predictable life, you never know when a simple kindness will open the door to everything.